I don't want to take much time in introducing Francesc Miralles, the Ikigai man who has become an icon in all parts of the world. And also, together we have decided that we would extend the question hour beyond 15 minutes, in the sense that we would stop our talk maybe 30 minutes, 35 minutes into it, and then we'll encourage questions from the audience, because I know you all have come to listen to him than listening to a dialogue between us. So that is understanding we have reached. As I said, there's no reason for me to introduce Mr. Francesc Miralles to become an icon. So the first, a very jocular question. Have you ever thought of changing your name to Francis Ikigai?
That's a good question. It's the first time I have, oh, yes, I have listened something like that. That's true that before writing Ikigai, I had already written 40 books. And before, when I was going to a venue, to an interview, to a TV program, radio program, I could talk about many topics, about psychology, resilience, about writing, creativity, and now 99% of meetings are about Ikigai. So I could be Francesc Ikigai, right?
Good. Most of us are a generation who grew up to this fantastic phrase, Hakuna Matata. No worries, nothing. Most of us in the 50s and the younger, from the Lion King we have inherited, we have repeated that to us. But today Ikigai has become a cult. What's the magic that took Ikigai to the world?
Yes, actually Ikigai has been a surprise even for the authors, because the origin of this project was a field work in the island of Okinawa. Hector Garcia, the co-author of the book, is an engineer, Spanish, living in Japan since 20 years. We were friends, and in one of our trips, we decided to go to the island of Okinawa to study this village of the centenarians, because we read in the Guinness Book of Records that they were #1 in the world as the village with more longevity. So we had the project of interviewing these centenarians, asking how they live, how they feel, how they relate to each other, what do they do. And it was very important in this investigation that all these old people, they didn't retire. They were always very active. They were very useful to society. And because of that, in the end, the name of the book was Ikigai. But we thought it would be a book for Japan specialists, so a niche of readers. But our surprise was that from the first day, it was #1 in Spain, and then in 1 year, it had already 30, 40 translations. And when Oprah Winfrey put it as Book of the Week, so it started what now in India we are experiencing, that is a very popular book, but we didn't expect it.
But do you think that if this book was written by a native Japanese or a person, an author of any other nationality, than a foreigner, it would have become such a big hit? Do you think a foreigner perspective added more mileage to its marketing?
Marketing? No, not in Spain, because actually the Ikigai book in Spain was published by a small publisher. And I think they invested $0 in publicity. It was more the people. So I have worked as publisher before being an author, because I worked in a psychology imprint. And I noticed that when we put a lot of money in a book, maybe the readers don't want that book. But what really makes a book successful is that the reader finds that it is inspiring, that it is useful, and then you recommend it to your sister, you recommend it to your couple, you recommend it to your uncle, and this is the way a phenomenon in literary world is created, by people only.
So it's its own dynamics that made it happen.
Yes.
Now, friends, my next question to you, or rather my doubt to you is, now you have had an exposure to India, say in the 90s, mid-90s, and why didn't you decide to write on something about India?
Yes. Before coming to India, I think it was 1998, I had been writing articles, I wrote some books under pseudonym, but I had never written a novel. But I was in my first trip here like 1 month and a half. I had a notebook and a pen, and I decided in the evenings to write my first novel that was called Lost in Bombay, Lost in Mumbai. And I think I had so many impressions from people, from the children, from the different religions, the color of the country, the difference between one state and the other, that I was totally excited, and I wanted to write it down so that other people could enjoy my trip. So India gave me the motivation and the creativity to become a professional writer.
But it's like 25 years plus since you first came to India. Do you think as a country we have lost our purpose, our Ikigai? Do you feel that Indian politics has changed so much that as a nation we have lost our purpose?
I don't think it's a problem in India, but a worldwide transformation. When I was a kid, I wasn't a very good reader, but I read some books. I read Tintin, and I read some adventure books. And my son, he's 13 years old, he never reads a book. He only wants to see YouTubers, Instagrammers, gamers, and he's trying to make business, creating a web page, and he has the thought or the idea that you can become rich in 1 month if you do something like that. So I think the young people in society, many of this, they have become impassioned. So they want to be rich, they want to be famous, they want to have followers, and they want it now. And because of that, I don't know if it's a matter of values, but maybe we have lost the value of looking to a middle and long term. And this is very important for your Ikigai. When you want to do something with your life, if you want to be a pianist like Lang Lang, or if you want to become a writer, or if you want to have a very interesting, I don't know, company doing something for humanity, you cannot do it in 24 hours. You need a long-term vision. And I think that's what we need to teach to the young people.
But if you say that your own son, like my children,
Yeah.
they all have, moved into the, I should say, a capsule purpose because they have a very limited vision. And I must admit that they don't have a vision for that matter. So why do you think this contradiction happened even in your own house if the son has not understood that philosophy of Ikigai when the world has embraced that philosophy through your book, so to speak? Why do you think that youngsters are moving away from this purpose? Like, why do you think that living for an 80 years or patiently moving through the life has lost its interest, has lost its value?
I think there is a direct relationship between Ikigai and longevity. And why? If you don't have a passion, if you don't have something that is thrilling in your life, you don't have interest in becoming 100 or 110 because life for you will be boring. And when you retire, I was talking with a senior man yesterday here in Kerala. He told me that here in Kerala the retirement age is 56. I am 55, so I would be next year retired if I was a Kerala citizen. And he said that the big problem is that with 56, many people don't know what to do with their time, how to fill all this free time. And I think that that's very important if you want to become 100, that you have some kind of purpose, some kind of mission. The Japanese are very good at that because this is a society oriented to service to society. So when a Japanese person is becoming retired officially, with 60, with 65, they have thought how would be the second life. So maybe you have worked in a bank, or you have been a white-collar worker, or you have worked in a shop, and then you get retired, and then you know what to do with your life, maybe teaching children, working with old people, doing something artistic. So if you have a reason to live, you will take care of your body, you will take care of your brain, and you can become 100.
This is a very personal doubt. Don't you think that when a person dreams to live till 110 or 100 plus, he is becoming selfish? He's only thinking about himself. My age, I should live 100 years. Don't you think it's a bit of selfishness?
I don't think it's selfish because if you are a good person, if you are contributing to society, if you are helping your family, the longer you live, the better for them. For me, it was very sad in my life that I lost my parents relatively young. So my mother died with 70 and my father with 69. So I would have loved that they could be longer with me. And I think if you are doing something useful for society, if you are working with community, if you are creating something that is a value, and you can live 100, better for the readers, better for the people who is nurturing from you.
But again, my doubt, this migration of youth from many countries to different countries, orphaning their aged parents, which is a serious concern in Kerala and in many states in India. So isn't there a contradiction that I am dreaming to be, say till 100, doing more service to society, but then when I turn 100, this question comes to me, for whom? Why did I do this? Why did I leave so much? Because my children have moved away, my relatives have moved away. Even in Japan, it's a concern.
Yeah, I think, of course, if we think in the Indian traditions, the sadhus go out from home when the family is already covered, and they live by themselves to connect with God, to prepare themselves for death. But in another kind of life, if you are very active and you are compromised with society, for whom? It depends on your mission. For instance, if you are a vocational teacher and you get retired, you still can be a teacher, working with children with problems, working in areas with another kind of necessities, maybe with old people, maybe helping new teachers to do their job. So if you find a job, if you find a purpose that helps society, this is the whom. So I think you lose the meaning in your life when you feel that there is no difference between being here or being dead. While you are useful, you can still always live one day more.
I think in worldwide, if you look at it, the politicians are the only people who thinks that they should live 100 years and continue to be in leadership. Is it a worldwide phenomenon that politicians hope to live longer and continue serving, while professionals would want to retire and take some time for themselves? Is that a worldwide phenomenon?
Yes. I confess that normally I don't vote in elections because I have a big deception of what political parties do in general, not in India, not in Spain. So I think many politicians, they are in a game of power or in keeping the power, and they don't look at society, they look each other, if I can have 1% more of vote or something like that. But of course, among all the politicians' world, I am sure that there are people with a clear desire to do something for the world. So in the end, it's an individual decision. It's not easy in a structure like a political party, in a structure like a parliament, to have a pure soul, because there are a lot of different pressures. But I think all of us, we can be decisive in a smaller scale. So sometimes we think that helping the world is having influence in thousands of people, but you have a lot of influence in your more next circle. You can help the happiness of your family, of your workmates, of your friends, in your little community. So let's start working from there, and maybe we cannot have impact in the big politics, but we can have impact in our proximate circle.
So, should I infer that Ikigai works only for a shorter diameter of society? That it doesn't have the power to extend itself to a larger society?
It has the power to extend, and actually, I've been in very big companies and in universities where Ikigai is the leading concept. And so, if you have Ikigai on the top, you can go to all the structures like this. But of course, Ikigai is an individual thing. So, we can have a shared Ikigai as a nation, as a company, as a group, but everyone must discover what you have inside, what is your talent. When you know what is your talent, what is your element, you must know how to bring it to the world, in which way, and then you build a purpose. And when you have a purpose, then you can have a strategy, a plan to make it reality.
But unfortunately, what we see here is we have people coming with announcing the purpose, like there are Sadgurus and human gods and people like that. But end of the way, we find that even from the times of Osho, we have found that they tilt more towards Western materialism, and sort of showcasing themselves as an extravagant Sadguru or an extravagant guru, than being closer to the purpose, being closer to the society. So what is this contradiction? Why do you think that a person loses a spiritual relevance the more the society, the more the cult grows? So what is that contradiction, if I may ask?
Yes, can you repeat nearer?
My question was, in India, in worldwide, we have seen godmen, godwomen coming announcing a purpose of serving the society.
Yes.
But eventually, in a few decades, they outgrow the purpose and they become such affluent occult movement across the world. So, according to me, they have defeated the purpose, initial purpose. So, this is a contradiction. I don't understand this contradiction. So, maybe you can throw some light on that.
I think one important thing of purpose is understanding that it changes through life. For instance, the other day I was remembering my life. I think I have had 4 different Ikigais already. I had an Ikigai as a teacher when I finished my studies in German literature in university. Then I had an Ikigai as a translator. I loved translating books and discovering new books. I had an Ikigai as publisher and writer. And now my Ikigai is being with people, being with the students, being with young people, helping them to find their purpose. So purpose is something that can change when you change. So it's not the same the Ikigai of somebody who is 16 years old from somebody who is 30 or somebody who is 65 and is retired and it's viewing his life in another way.
Can you expand that a bit more clearly? You know that
Yes.
you yourself said that in Kerala people retire in 56.
Yes.
So maybe you should throw more light on what you expect people. How do you expect them to make that mid-course correction after the mid-50s?
Yes, the thing is that 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when you got retired, you didn't have so long life expectancy like now. So I remember when my father got retired, he died 4 years after, and he was quite sick after that. But nowadays, if you keep good shape, your body and your mind, maybe with 56 you retire, and you can have 20, 25 quality years. And the big question is, what are you going to do with these years that you get as a present? So if you want to feel realized, if you want to feel fulfilled, you need to find something where you feel that you are useful to society. I have worked with many teenagers who have depression, and normally a person is depressed when you feel that you don't have any impact on others. So when you think that you can be here or you can be out of life and it makes no difference. So I think if I would be in Kerala and retired with 56, I would think urgently what to do with my life so that when I am not here anymore, I can be remembered for something useful.
But then the struggle is so much that you feel so drained. And I'm just giving you the perspective from an Indian perspective. By the time you retire, you feel so drained because majority of your time, energy, you have invested in things that you can't inherit, in the sense that you have invested in the education of your children, you have invested in something else. And these are not the things that come back to you. So that's why I said, I have found that there is a serious concern about geriatric depression, the depression among old people.
Also, yes.
So that is also setting
Also,
hugely like a cloud.
Yes, there are many old people who are depressed, also in Spain. Actually, there was a social investigation in the Spanish cities, and they made a calculation that if you are alone, living in an apartment, and not having much contact with the world because you are retired, maybe your children are grown up and they live in other cities, and you don't have much contact with others, this kind of loneliness kills as much as smoking 20 cigarettes a day. So this is clear that there are old people, or not so old people, there are retired people who feel depressed because there is a very big change between going every day to the office, having some conversations there, having something to do, and then suddenly you are at home with all your time. But it depends on how much did you cultivate yourself intellectually and spiritually along your life. If you have been a person with hobbies, if you have been a person with some artistic activity, then you will be happy to have more time. If you were working in a bank and you have a soul of a writer, and while working you had only maybe 1 hour a day to write, it's a blessing that you have now 8 hours. But this is something that you must prepare before. So it's good that while you are young, you are already nurturing some passion.
So you mean to say that like a futures trading, like the investment you make in a bank or in mutual fund or something, you have to have an investment in yourself.
Yes.
That's what you're trying to say.
This is a work that you must do all your life. If you're a curious person, if you like reading, if you like going to a conference, a lecture like today, when you are old, you can go on doing that and you can teach other people. There is an interesting theory that I read working for an article in the newspaper, El País, the national newspaper. There is a book called From Strength to Strength. I don't remember the author. And this author says life has two parts, like a football match. A soccer match has first part and second part. Life is the same. And he says, in the first part of your life, you must be be a light for yourself. But in the second part of your life, you must illuminate the path of others. So I think you can have an Ikigai in this first part that is creating things, achieving things, doing interesting things. And in this second part, and even when you are retired, you can be the lighthouse for the others, especially for the young people. And if you are helping young people to implement the Ikigai, you will feel young also.
So you mean to say that half the life you play like a Cristiano Ronaldo or a Messi, and
Yes.
then you become a defender.
You become a coach, yes.
You become a coach.
That's a good allegory, yes.
Because you come from Barcelona,
Yes.
the heart is all of football. So, but do you think it is easily possible for a common man? See, again, most of my doubts come from an Indian perspective, because there's a lot of struggle that Indian middle class go through, especially in the current scenario. Because if you think that even in the last decade, the divide between the rich and poor has become huge. The gulf is ever expanding. So, when I am 52 now. So, but then the struggles the societal struggles I have to deal with would be very different from a struggle that a Japanese native would deal with. So, how do you think Ikigai philosophy I could adopt?
Yes, actually, Ikigai philosophy is not something Japanese or is not something from the East. Why? Because what we studied, the way of living of these people, it's in a rural community. If we go to a village in India, in Spain, in America, in Russia, it would be similar. So what helps these people to have a meaningful life is that they have a lot of contact with friends. When you don't pay attention to your friends, then it will come a moment in which your family will be far away maybe from you. And if you don't cultivate this circle of friendship, then you will feel alone. So in these communities, in Japan or anywhere in the world, what are the common facts in the blue zones? That you have a lot of contact with your neighbors. Your neighbors are your friends and they are your family even. You make a lot of things with them, you eat with them, you celebrate with them, you help each other. That's very important. You live outside. That's also very important for longevity. The chronobiology is studying how the inner clocks synchronize with the outer clock that is the light of the sun. If you are outside, working in the garden, walking, in contact with the fresh air, you will be healthier. If you are together with other people, and if you don't retire and you do what you love, then you can have this sense of Ikigai. And it's nothing that is Japanese, it's something that you can do in India, it's something you can do near Barcelona.
So in short, it means that you should not just compare yourself with your neighbor. You should not be jealous about your neighbor, but to the contrary, you should try and embrace him as a brother.
Yes, we should treat our neighbors as our friends, our cousins. Actually, in Okinawa, there is a very nice saying. We must think that it's very strange that Okinawa is the blue zone #1 in the world. Why? Because it's the poorest part of Japan, so the income of the population is much lower than in Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto. There is much more unemployment. Part of the island is a military base called Cadena, and they suffered a lot in the Second World War because there was a battle in the field and 100,000 people were killed. And surprisingly, nowadays in Okinawa, there are a lot of Americans who live there. Not only the soldiers, but also people who came to the island attracted by the surf, and they were in love with the place. Maybe they married, they learned Japanese, and they integrated in society. And when you see these people, they are treated like Japanese. So they don't think of what the grandparents did or what happened in the past, what happened in the war. And actually, the philosophy of Okinawa, they have a saying that is very nice, that is, when we sit around the same table once, we are already brothers and sisters. And many sociologists believe that one of the secrets of the longevity of Okinawa is this philosophy of forgiving and letting the past away.
Again, my question is it easy to forgive? Because for a nation like Japan, which suffered maximum,
Yes.
is it easy for them to forgive? Or because Okinawa is far removed and sort of resigned to its fate, is it why it is becoming easy for them to adopt Ikigai? Is it easy to forgive?
Yeah, actually, the modern history of Japan is very surprising because we must think that Japan was totally destroyed in the 45, and only 15 years after it was an international power in electronics, #1 in the world. How did they do it? This is called the Japanese miracle, and it's because this is a very practical country. They thought, okay, we have lost the war, what can we do together? And they have this philosophy of Kaizen that is, let's do something every day, a little thing, so that tomorrow we can be a bit better and tomorrow a bit better. So what they did was to put their energies and their efforts to perfection. They know that perfection is impossible to attain, but they tried to do the things that existed in America even better with this Takumi mentality that is you can always do it a bit better, and they love to work together. So this Kaizen philosophy that, for instance, they do it in the Toyota factory, the idea is that everyone should contribute to make some little progress. And if you do it every day, in 100 days, in 1,000 days, the progress is enormous.
One more question about Japan. Now, in the other parts of Japan, which is like fast developed, and you said, you want the water, please? Want the water? So, in other parts of Japan, where life is very fast, do you think they themselves are sort of adopting the Okinawa principles? They themselves are trying to develop or repurpose the Ikigai? A normal Japanese, say, middle-level officer, do they do that, a high-flying officer?
Actually, this way of living of Okinawa and Ogimi, the village of the centenarians, is totally opposite from the life in Tokyo, for instance. People who live in the big cities, they are as stressed as somebody in New Delhi or in Madrid, in Berlin. Why? Because they live for working only. So the typical Japanese man in Osaka, in Kyoto, you wake up at 7, you go to your work, you come back at 8 maybe, and in the weekend maybe you spend some time with your family. But life is focused in obligation, is focused in your job. And even to go out with friends, normally it's with the companions of your office. No? And this is totally different from the natural and slow life in Okinawa. So maybe the problem is the way of living that we have in the cities, where everything must be urgent, everything must be speedy, everything, and you don't have time to meet yourself and to be in a nice conversation with other people.
So, you mean to say that even modern Japan is failing to balance between life and work?
Yes.
Why is that happening? Because since they have such a strong philosophy.
This is very interesting what you say. I think the really wise people are the ones who find this balance. Stephen Covey, the author of the 7 Keys of Efficient People, he said, the problem of working only in urgent things is that this has no end. You make something that is urgent, and then you have next thing that is urgent. And what is urgent, it's important for somebody, but not for yourself. And maybe you are running all the time, but your priorities, this thing that is important for you and that you want to do it, it's procrastinated. You put it, I will do it tomorrow, I will do it next week, I will do it next year. So for Stephen Covey, balance in life, when you find a middle point between what you give to the others and what you give to yourself.
It's a very interesting concept of a mirror point. So you mean to say that the sense of urgency doesn't exist in Okinawa, and maybe why they have this success?
Yes, they don't have urgency because it's a rural island. They don't have much industry, and it's a very hot place. The climate is hot. It's like in Kerala in summer. So it makes that people has another rhythm, and they work outside, and they don't have the urgency of a man or a woman in front of computer trying to answer 100 emails. They don't have this kind of life.
But unfortunately, in corporate setup and even in politics, so to speak, or in any realm of society, a person who takes things slow is seen as a non-performer.
Yes, but now we are living in the age of multitasking. People pretend to do many things at the same time, but it doesn't mean that it's well done. So I can do many things, I can be very quick, I can speak on the phone with 100 people, but it doesn't mean that it's a quality work. Actually, if you don't do your work properly, you need to repeat it or you need to correct many things. So sometimes focus in only one thing will solve the question more than trying to run from here to there. And especially when you are doing something that is important and that you want, that is that has some impact in the future. So it's very important to recover the focus, and that is something that the Indian masters knew 5,000 years ago.
You have mentioned earlier about Raman Maharshi and a few others like Jiddu Krishnamurti impacting you. You mean that the followers or the current spate of godmen in India, they're not fulfilling this, what India conceived 5,000 years ago?
I think from my first trip to India, the transformation of the society is amazing. The first time I was here, it was 1998. I was in Mumbai, and most of the children in the street didn't have shoes. And I came back to Bombay 2 years ago, and there were much more highways than in Barcelona. So the progress is huge. And of course, it means that maybe some people are less spiritual and more profession-oriented. That's normal. And I think one of the keys of the success of Ikigai is that India is a very young country with a lot of young people which have projects, startups, and with a lot of talent. So maybe we have lost this mysticism of Ramana Maharshi or the intellectuality of Jiddu Krishnamurti, but I think that there are many people also who can combine both. You can read Krishnamurti, and you can have a company, and you can have a project, and you can contribute to society. I remember, for me it was important. I am well known for my books about Japan, but when I was a teenager, I was reading many books of Jiddu Krishnamurti. I was a bit irritated sometimes because I thought, this author puts me a lot of questions, but he doesn't give me any answer. But maybe that's the way to progress intellectually, to question everything.
Have you had a chance to study the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, Yogi Adityanath?
What?
Yogi Adityanath, the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh,
Yes.
he's a saint. He was a practicing saint. My question would be only if you know him, because he was a saint, he belonged to an ashram, and then today he's the Chief Minister of a state, and he is rated as a success, quote unquote success.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's a contradiction.
Yes, actually, we are speaking of two different things. So we are in society, and there is an obsession with success, having followers, having money, having a name in society. But actually, if we come back to Ramana Maharshi, when he was living in Arunachala, and some student came from India or from a Western country, the only tool that he gave was the question, who am I? So they were with this exercise of asking yourself all the time, who am I? Francesc Miralles, no, this is your name. Who am I? I am a writer, no, this is your profession. I am from Barcelona, no, this is your origin. Now, I think it's compatible that you can have a spiritual life, you can know yourself, you can develop yourself as a person, and you can have success doing something good for society.
But in a country with so much of plurality like India, do you think that a very clear icon of spirituality in the saffron robes, becoming a democratic chief minister, do you think it's good for the plurality of a country?
Plurality includes many things. And actually, after Ikigai with Hector Garcia, we were writing a book about India that will be published here maybe next year. And we wanted to include not only the old masters. It's okay to speak about Buddha and to speak about all these great thinkers, but we also talked about the CEOs of India who are working in foreign companies. For instance, Microsoft was about to have bankrupt before Satya Nadella came there to direct it. And it's very interesting to know this new Indian leadership who have come to direct Silicon Valley companies, what kind of philosophy they have. And people like Satya Nadella, they are quite humanistic. For instance, when Nadella wants to hire somebody for a responsibility position, his question is not the curriculum vitae, but this person is going to bring clarity to organization, or this person is going to bring chaos. If he or she has to bring chaos, it's better not to be with us. If it's bringing clarity, it's okay, it will be good for the organization. So I think we are in a very interesting point of history in which India is not only giving labor to the work, not only giving engineers, programmers, mathematicians, but also leaders. And let's see what happens with these people who come from a quite different tradition in this modern world.
We have also given a Kamala Harris and a Vivek Ramaswamy, and
Okay.
also Rishi Sunak. So
Thank
it's
you.
not just in Silicon Valley leadership.
Yes.
Indian politicians are also there. But do you think that it is their professional caliber? Isn't it that professional caliber that is, why that is picked them up than being an Indian?
Professional career,
Caliber of a Sundar Pichai or a Nadella.
Nadella.
They were very good as a professional. They were very good.
Yes.
But don't you think that it is their caliber, it is their efficiency
Yes.
that has stood good for them
Yes.
than their Indianness?
But they have a different way of seeing what is progress in a company. For instance, Microsoft had a problem because it was old-fashioned, the model of business. And Satya Nadella, when he arrived, he decided to diversify what they were doing and to go to many more fields that maybe they were not doing that. So I think we live in a very interesting point now because nobody knows what is going to happen with the world, with the companies, with the economy, with the country. So we live in a total uncertain times. And it brings me to an old author, Alan Watts. Alan Watts was a great Orientalist. He was a British-American author who talked about Buddhism, Taoism, and he had a very important book that is still published right now that is called The Wisdom of Insecurity. And this book was already written in the 60s. And he said, people fear insecurity, people like having control of what will happen, but actually life, the essence of life is insecurity. And when you understand that and you flow with that, then you can be happy again.
Have other authors from above who have written about Japan, Japanese culture, like a Murakami or
Yes.
another Golden, have they influenced you?
Yes. Actually, during the week, during the day, I have to read a lot of essays because I write for newspapers, for magazines. I must prepare a talk with the students, and so I read a lot of nonfiction. But when I am in bed or when I am traveling, I love reading novels. And I think I have read all novels of Murakami, and I read a lot of novels of Mishima, that was another author 50 years before. And I love the way he writes because he writes very simple, very daily details are in the story. And I think Murakami is important because he has achieved to explain in a very simple way the confusion of modern humanity. And so when we read novels like Norwegian Wood or others, we find all the confusion that is in the spirit of a young person, and he explained it in a very entertaining way and with a little of mystery and this unique style. I love reading Murakami and other Japanese authors. I love their style because they are very rich in observing reality and in description.
And among the Indian authors, who are you following somebody? Are you regularly reading up an Indian author?
What?
Any Indian author? Are you
Indian
reading?
author. Actually, I remember the first time I was in India, I was reading Arundhati Roy, The God of Little Things, and I enjoyed that. And my Indian readings are basically the Indian masters. I don't know many Indian writers, no, but I am in touch with authors that I am knowing in this festival, and I will bring home some new books to read.
Okay, time for the question.
Thank you very much. And if you have some questions, it will be a pleasure to answer them. If we have time.
Yes, we have time.
Yes.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I have two questions for you. In your book, Ikigai, you talked about the concept of anti-fragility. Anti-fragile.
Anti-fragility, yes.
So could you talk us through a little bit about that? And my second question is, in our world of urgency, you talked about urgency. How can we keep up the art of flow, like following your Ikigai?
Two important questions, yes. Anti-fragility, we can relate it with resilience. That is a very common concept in psychology. So it means that we cannot expect that there won't be problems in our life. What we experience is that when we solve one problem, it comes the next problem. And so we will never live in quietness and we will never live in serenity, but life is a series of problems that you have to solve, and if you don't take them personally and you take them as something that makes you grow, then you are anti-fragile. So fragility is in our mind, not in reality. So the same problem for one person, anti-fragile, can be something funny, something that you can do, and for other people it's a drama. So what we must explore is how do we experience reality through our minds, and for that I think the big master was Buddha, and he said you cannot avoid pain, but you can avoid suffering, because suffering is a mental concept. And the second question was the flow, yes. Work and flow, that's very interesting. Actually, Confucius, the Chinese master, said, find an activity that you love and you won't work a single day in your life. So I think a good aspiration is, now that you are young, try to find something that even if you are working 10 hours a day in that, you are enjoying that, because then it's not job at all. So, for instance, Picasso, the Spanish painter, when he was over 80, he was still painting 11 hours a day. But for him, it was not a job. For him, it was a flow. So if we can find something that makes us flow, we will be excellent in that, and it's more possible that we are successful. So if you are not in the right job because you feel that you could be more powerful with other things, start a transition to try to get there.
So my question is, it will be quite interesting to know how your outlook towards life changed by writing Ikigai. How was your outlook towards life before Ikigai
Yes.
and after Ikigai?
That's an interesting question. Actually, the good thing of being a writer is that famous writers have very common lives. If I was a soccer player of Barcelona, I couldn't go to the street in Spain because everybody would like to have a photo with you. But nobody knows that you are a writer. So even here in India, that the book has been #1 in 2021 and 2022, when they know that I am the author of Ikigai, they are surprised. So in this way, your life is very discreet. And what has changed is that before writing Ikigai, my life had many more topics. So sometimes I went to a university to speak about Kafka. I went to other place to speak about resilience, to speak about Japanese philosophy. And now 99% of the interviews, of the lectures are about Ikigai. And we have received thousands and thousands of emails we try to answer all of them. And these emails are from Ikigai readers who are impressed by the book and they want to do something with their lives and they have a project. So I think the main change in my life is that every day I am dedicating many hours to answer to people who read the book. But it's a pleasure and it's a honor.
Yeah,
Yes.
I have two questions for you, sir. After Ikigai, we used to hear about a lot of other Japanese concepts also, like Kaizen or Hara Hachibu, Shinrin Yoku, etc. So, other than Ikigai, which other this concept have influenced you the most? That was my first question. Then second one, have any of the Buddhist teachings or Buddhist philosophy you have any profound influence on?
Influence of Buddhism. Yes. Actually, when an author writes a book, learns from this same book. When we were in Okinawa learning the way of living of the centenarians, things like harahachibu, don't fill your stomach more than 80%, we are trying to apply it to our life. Actually, many days I don't have dinner, and I have like a general harahachibu, and there were a lot of things from these old people that we try to put in our daily lives. And from Buddhism, for me, I started reading about Buddhism when I was 14, 15. I think Buddha was the first psychologist of history because he was not talking about God, he was not talking about religion, he was not talking about afterlife, he's talking about the mind. He's exploring what happens with the mind. And for me, it was very important to discover Buddhism because when I was very young, I had a bad relationship with desire. I wished many things that didn't happen. For instance, I was in love with some girl of my school, and I suffered because of that. And when I started reading the quotes of Buddha, I understood that real happiness is being free of wishing what you don't have and enjoying the moment and enjoying what is here and don't trying to put a distance between your reality and your ideas. So I think it gave me a lot of peace, but I don't have any special religion. I was raised as a Christian, I studied Buddhism, but I am interested in every way of spirituality. Thank you.
Hi, sir. Thank you for coming over and for the wonderful session. My question is, you told you had 4 different ikigais at some point in time. It's possible that you can have more than one purpose in life, and you've got a very limited time. How do you reallocate time in such a way that both ikigais doesn't suffer?
Yes, that's interesting. We have seen in our conversation that Ikigai can change. Actually, there was a German philosopher, Rudolf Steiner, the founder of anthroposophy, and he said that life changes every 7 years, he said. The septenniums, it's called. So from 0 to 7 is the little child. From 7 to 14, we have the teenager. From 14 to 21, you focus in your career. And it happens with every life. We can have a purpose, we can have an ikigai, but we changed and the ikigai changes with us. But also, we can have 2 or even 3 ikigais at the same time. The typical example was the writer Franz Kafka. During the mornings, he was a lawyer in an insurance company called Generali. It still exists. And he was working passionately as a lawyer. And then he came home, he slept a couple of hours, a long nap, and after that he was writing from the evening until 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. So he had 2 lives in one. But imagine Kafka died very young, with 40. If he had lived a bit longer, maybe he had become father, and when he had a baby, this would be a third ikigai, the main ikigai when you have a baby. And then he had a job and a passion. So it's possible that if you are a very active person, you can have a job ikigai, a profession that you love, but also a space in which you do something for yourself, maybe writing, maybe playing an instrument, maybe doing mindfulness. So it's possible to combine more than one Ikigai, but there is always one which takes more time and more energy.
On the one hand, you talked about the Okinawa Islanders embracing Ikigai. But there are also, I think, Japanese living in cities, which you alluded to a little bit, particularly the older generation who are living very lonely lives. Their children are far away working and not able to take time to take care for them. Sometimes they die in their own apartments without being discovered for weeks together. So I understand that their work culture is taking a big toll on their lives as well. The emotional quotient, their interpersonal skills, are they still lacking that, or the younger generation is discovered the work-life balance and moving with the times?
Yes, I think it's very important to find a balance. Yes, it's important to find a balance between the service to society and the personal cultivation. Because if you are always giving, in the end, you are empty. So it happens also in the couples. If you have a wife, if you have a husband, and you want to do everything together, in the end, you won't have anything to tell to your companion of life. It's good that you do things for yourself, that you read, that you go to a lecture, that you write, that you practice something different, so that when you get together with your couple, you can share it. And it happens also in general in life. I think a human being needs space for himself, for herself, in which you nurture yourself of something that fills your soul, and then you can give it to the others. Actually, there is an old, ancient Indian poet who said that the great souls are like the clouds that gather water to give it to the world. So I think the life of every person is something like that. We learn things, we acquire things, we get things for ourselves, for after that sharing with others. And I think this is the balance. Receiving, and after we can give.
It's wonderful to see you in person here.
Thank you very much.
I have to tell you that your book has been a guide as I started getting old. I did have a question as to, when you wrote the book, it was an observation on people living in Okinawa, right? And the other places. And did you write it with the old people, aging population in mind, or wanting to help them, or the youth wanting to show them the way? How did...
Actually, because we were talking with people who were 100 years old and older, one of the men who we interviewed was 108. So they were giving a lot of advice about life. So we consider them masters of life, because if you get to 100, it means that you know how to live and you can show it. So we found that it could be very useful for the young people to get this wisdom and to put it in their daily lives, but also for the older people in the situation that we were commenting. People who are retired and that they think that their life has no purpose, to show that people being 100 can do very interesting things for the community or for themselves. And actually, this is a new tendency in society. In United States, they are talking a lot about the late bloomers. That is a very beautiful word. Late bloomer, it's somebody who shows a capacity very late in life, and we have examples of writers starting with 80, people being 100, going to university in England, and maybe after 60 years coming back to education. So our idea with Ikigai was to work in two main topics: the secrets for a long and happy life, but also the importance of having a purpose, whatever your age is, to have a purpose in life that is like a lighthouse. Thank you.
Thank you. You are a wonderful audience. Thank you, Francis.
Thank you very much.